大家好, my name is Hana+C CHI1 and I'm going to be presenting on Zhongguo versus Mingguo education. The history of Chinese education. China has a long history of education which dates back to the Shang dynasty around 1600 BC. Students studied about the 4 books and the 5 classics to learn about the teachings of Confucius. Ancient Chinese education really valued Confucianism, and also education was expensive back then and was primarily available to only boys from elite families. These elites would study to become imperial officers through the civil service exam. The civil service exam was open to anyone to take, and it was supposed to be an opportunity for the lower class to rise through the social ranks. However, because education was so inaccessible to them, the people who passed the civil service exams were mainly boys from elite families. The civil service exam tested on Confucianism and had a 1% passing rate. 那时大多数中国学生都是富家子弟，老师们讲授儒家思想. This means that at that time, most Chinese students were from rich families, and the Chinese teachers were teaching about Confucianism. 讲授儒家思想 means to teach Confucianism. To continue, the majority of China was illiterate until the early 1900s. When China was defeated in the Sino-Japanese War, China decided to reform the education system. They realized that a lot of their technology and education was inferior, so they decided to modernize their education system by incorporating more Western education models. This is also why the civil service exam was canceled, and so from then on, when the Chinese Communist Party took over in 1949, Chinese education experienced even more change. So during the Great Leap Forward, education became more accessible to more people, which means that more people became getting more and more literate, so there was a higher literacy rate than before. And during this time, education primarily focused on Mao's ideology. Manual labor was also incorporated more into education. However, this progress was soon disrupted. During the Cultural Revolution, intellectuals were persecuted, schools were shut down, and students were encouraged to participate in political activism instead of their studies. This is why the people from this generation are known as the Lost Generation, because they were unable to receive higher education. After this period, education was reformed. Academic rigor was emphasized, traditional subjects were restored, and entrance exams were reintroduced. 中国的教育发生了很大的变化，现在所有的孩子都是学生. This means that education in China has undergone great changes. Now all children are students. 教育 means education. 发生了很大的变化 means a lot has changed. The key differences between Chinese and American education are in these 4 factors: curriculum, testing and assessment, student life and workload, and college admissions. I'll go over each of these factors individually in the next few slides. 中国学生和美国学生有相同之处，可是也有不同之处. This means that Chinese students and American students have similarities, but they also have differences. 有相同之处 means to have similarities. Chinese curriculum and American curriculum differ from each other because Chinese curriculum places emphasis on memorization, standardized testing, information retention, and precision, while American curriculum places emphasis on problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, and different learning styles. 中国的课程很难. This means that the Chinese curriculum is difficult. 课程 means the curriculum. Next, Chinese school routines and American school routines are also quite different. In China, school days are typically longer. They mostly start at 7:30 a.m. and end at 6 p.m. Also, schools hold mandatory evening self-studies where classes run from 7 to 9 p.m. During these classes, students will study for their homework or important tests in the future. Once home, students will study even more to finish up their work and then go to bed. In America, school days run significantly shorter. This leaves room for extracurriculars. Most schools start at 8 a.m. and end around 2 p.m. 中国学生很忙，他们经常住在学校。This means that Chinese students are very busy and they're in school all day. Next, I will be discussing the difference between Chinese classrooms and American classrooms. Chinese classrooms have systems where the overall grades are based on test scores, and the classrooms are very teacher-centered, where the teacher has a lot of authority. Chinese classrooms are also typically larger, and participation is not actively encouraged. Also, class is on Saturdays too, so students have basically a one-day weekend. In contrast, American classrooms have grade systems where they're based on test scores, assignments, and participation. Classrooms are also typically smaller, and participation and discussion are actively encouraged. 在中国老师们很严格. 很严格 means strict, and the sentence that I just said means in China, teachers are strict. The college admissions process is also different for China and America. In China, admissions is based on the Gaokao, and the top university acceptance rates are a lot lower because Chinese admissions is very, very competitive, even more than America. For instance, Tsinghua University has an acceptance rate of less than 1%, while Harvard University has an acceptance rate of around 3%. And American admissions is based on many different factors, including extracurriculars, academic records, essays, and test scores. However, in some cases in America, some test scores aren't even accepted by the universities, so admissions relies on the other factors. 中国的大学很难进. This means that Chinese universities are difficult to get into. Lastly, Chinese college entrance exams are different from American college entrance exams. College entrance exams for China are much higher stake, and as mentioned previously, it's called the Gaokao. Scores on the Gaokao are the only determining factor for college admissions, and this is why the Gaokao is so stressful for Chinese high school students. The Gaokao tests on Chinese math and a foreign language of choice. So typically, Chinese students choose English as their foreign language, and they do testing at the end of 12th grade. This is around early June. American college entrance exams are much different because they are much, much lower stake. The options are the SAT and the ACT, and the SAT covers math and English, while the ACT covers math, English, and science. However, these tests are not the sole factor for college and admissions. As mentioned previously, a lot of universities do not require the SAT or ACT, and even in some cases, like the UCs in California, admissions officers do not consider your scores for the SAT or ACT. 高考很难，学生们6月3届高考. This means that the Gaokao is very difficult, and students take the college entrance examination in June. Finally, I thought this was interesting because I thought that because I'm a student, I would like to compare my life to other people that are in the same position but in different countries. And so learning about Chinese education has led me to appreciate the ease and how relaxed my own education is. 因为我是一个学生，所以我觉得这个话题很有意思。话题 means the topic, and I meant because I'm a student, I find this topic very interesting. Okay, 谢谢 for your time. 再见.